Welcome to Dutch Horizons, a channel exploring how the Netherlands transformed the world through innovation, daring trade, and new ideas. Here, we journey across history's turning points, from epic battles to peaceful negotiations. If you enjoy uncovering the stories that forged modern nations, remember to support our channel by liking and subscribing, so you never miss an episode of Discovery and Insight. In this episode of The Dutch in War and Peace, we'll delve deep into the early days of the Dutch Republic and its desperate struggle against Spanish domination. You'll learn how fierce conflict and enduring resilience led to the birth of a new nation. Join us as we trace battles, examine motivations, and explore the forging of a unique Dutch identity amid relentless wars. Chapter 1. Wars with Spain. Securing Independence. The story begins in the late 16th century. Dutch provinces, once united under the powerful Habsburg Spanish crown, found themselves pressed by high taxes, religious oppression, and the relentless rule of King Philip II. Sparks of rebellion ignited across cities and fields, laying the foundations for revolution. As the 80 Years' War unfolded, Dutch citizens faced hardship and uncertainty. Whole communities were caught between loyalty to the distant Spanish king and the fierce drive for local freedom. Forts rose from the marshlands, while nearby rivers became both barriers and escape routes. Each skirmish, siege, and blockade slowly shaped a people's determination to endure and to resist. Spanish armies marched north, intent on crushing the revolt with overwhelming force. Yet the Dutch, led by William of Orange, met each advance with unexpected resolve. Through flooding fields and guerrilla tactics, the outnumbered rebels learned the art of survival. Their struggle was not only military, but a political awakening, stirring hopes of a republic free from foreign rule. The motivations fueling the resistance were profound. For many, it was about breaking from religious conformity, as Protestant communities sought refuge from Catholic Spain. For others, economic freedom was vital. Merchants and townsfolk resented crushing taxes and trade restrictions. These shared grievances forged alliances among provinces, planting the seeds of a collective identity. Over decades, the war devastated towns and families, yet also inspired remarkable innovation in warfare and diplomacy. Fortified cities withstood harsh sieges, thanks to clever designs and communal resolve. Across the Republic, messages of unity spread, fostering a belief that determination and cooperation could defy even the mightiest empire. Through hardship, the Dutch began to envision their future. As the conflict wore on, the Dutch cause attracted foreign support, while Spain faced its own crises abroad. Every battlefield taught new lessons about resilience and negotiation. The struggle for independence proved more than a military confrontation. It was the forging of a people prepared to shape their destiny, setting the stage for the Dutch Republic's rise in Europe's ever-shifting balance of power. Chapter 2. Anglo-Dutch Wars' Control of Trade Routes. The 17th century dawned with fierce ambition as the Dutch Republic and England clashed across the world's oceans. Their rivalry was not just about ships and sailors, but about who would command the flow of spices, silk and silver. Each fleet sailed under the weight of national pride, embarking on journeys where every cannon shot could shift the balance of global fortunes. In these turbulent times, sea lanes became battlegrounds of strategy and courage. The Dutch, with their formidable merchant fleet, challenged England's claim to maritime power. Their convoys braved storms and enemy fire, determined to safeguard shipments that connected Indonesia, the Caribbean, and Europe. Amid the salt and spray, both nations sent messages to the world. Here, control of trade meant control of trade, meant control of destiny. Epic encounters unfolded as admirals wielded both cunning and caution. Legends like Michiel de Ruyter and Robert Blake commanded squadrons that danced between daring attacks and practical retreats. Each engagement was a calculated risk, with wind, tide and naval discipline shaping the fate of nations. As war raged, the crews aboard these ships lived with constant tension, their futures uncertain in the roar of battle. The economic stakes behind Buchanan Smoke were immense. Possession of key trade routes fueled both empires' prosperity. Sugar, tobacco and textiles flowed through channels fiercely protected by convoys and warships. Blockades, privateers and embargoes turned commerce itself into a weapon, as both sides aimed to choke off each other's wealth. Trade was the true prize, shaping every decision and sacrifice at sea. But the seas were unforgiving, claiming ships and souls in storms as brutal as any broadside. Sailors faced not only enemy shot, but disease, hunger, and the uncertainty of ever reaching home. Families watched the horizon, awaiting news of victory or disaster. The maritime rivalry bled into daily life, reminding citizens in Amsterdam and London how fragile their prosperity truly was. As campaigns dragged on, strategies adapted. The Dutch innovated with swift, agile vessels known as fluits, while the English developed new formations to outmaneuver rivals. Dockyards bustled with activity, churning out hulls and cannons in feverish preparation. Mastery of logistics, navigation and technology became as vital as valour, defining which nation would rise or yield in the great struggle for supremacy. Eventually, exhaustion set in. Each war imposed costs that pressed both governments to the brink. Blocked harbours stifled trade, and debts mounted as navies demanded endless upkeep. The broader world watched carefully, sensing that every treaty signed in the aftermath could remake alliances and redraw maps. Yet neither side wished peace without honour or advantage, perpetuating a cycle of rivalry. By the end of these Anglo-Dutch wars, borders and fortunes had shifted, but so too had perceptions of power. Both the Dutch Republic and England emerged changed with lessons etched by battle and negotiation. This chapter of history reveals how oceans, once open to all, had become fiercely contested frontiers. Out of storm and smoke, a new global order slowly took shape, guided by commerce, rivalry, and the relentless quest for stability. Chapter 3: Continental Conflicts, France and Alliances. As the Dutch Republic grew stronger, Europe itself seemed to tremble. Old friendships could turn cold in an instant, and a neighbour's ambition was always near. In this chapter, we travel through tense corridors of power, where decisions made in candlelit rooms could change the fate of nations. The Republic's survival now depended on more than ships and fortresses. It required careful diplomacy. The shadow of France loomed large over Europe. Louis XIV, the Sun King, eyed the Dutch Republic with both suspicion and greed. Across rivers and borders his armies gathered. Meanwhile, alliances shifted like tides. The Dutch, facing threats from almost every direction, had to weave their own network of partnerships. With each agreement signed and each handshake offered, the Republic hoped to hold back the storm gathering along its borders. Surprise became a weapon. In 1672, known in Dutch history as the Disaster Year, French troops swept into the Republic's lands with staggering speed. Allies were slower to help than expected. Panic and uncertainty gripped Dutch towns and cities. But instead of collapse, this pressure sparked resilience. The Republic's leaders scrambled to rally old friends and to promise new bargains. Survival now depended on fast thinking and flexible alliances. The art of alliance meant making deals with former rivals, even enemies. Sometimes the Dutch found themselves at the same table with England, Spain or German princes with their own ambitions. Trust was scarce. Secret letters travelled between capitals, outlining trades and promises. Every agreement came with risk, but for the Republic the choice was clear: adapt or risk being crushed between giants. Diplomacy was as urgent as warfare. Yet diplomacy could be treacherous. Agreements might be broken at a moment's notice, and no treaty was entirely safe. The Dutch had to read between the lines and anticipate betrayal, looking for hidden motives in every gesture. But through cautious negotiation and timely compromises, the Republic found ways to survive the dangerous game of European politics. Each decision at the negotiation table carried consequences for both peace and conflict. On the battlefield, the Dutch soldiers fought desperately. Rivers and dikes became their shields, flooded purposefully to halt invaders. Strategic retreats preserved strength, while defenders clung to cities and fortresses. Every success was hard won and celebrated, but every setback taught new lessons. The combination of military ingenuity and diplomatic agility kept the Republic afloat, even when surrounded by danger. The struggle was constant, but so was the determination to endure. Victories were never absolute. Peace came in fragile moments, the result of exhaustion as much as strategy. Worn by years of fighting and negotiation, leaders on all sides sometimes paused to talk. These moments shaped the future. Boundaries were redrawn, old rivalries cooled, and temporary calm settled over the region. For the Dutch Republic, peace was never permanent, only an opportunity to rebuild, regroup, and prepare for whatever came next. The legacy of these continental conflicts lingered long after the battles ended. Shifting alliances taught the Dutch to adapt, while the threat from France kept them vigilant. This era showed that survival depended on a delicate balance: strength in defence, skill in negotiation, and readiness for change. The Republic's journey through these storms left deep marks on its leaders and its people, shaping a nation always prepared for both war and peace. Chapter 4: Forts and Defences. Protecting borders. Shielded by wind and water, the Dutch perfected the craft of defence like few others. Imagine sprawling networks of stone forts, carefully channeled rivers, and low dikes built not just to keep out the sea, but to slow armies as well. In this chapter, we journey inside glowing strongholds, examining how creative engineering became the Republic's silent yet steadfast guardian. Every brick and bastion played a crucial role in defending the Dutch heartland. Ingenious military engineers combined ancient knowledge with new techniques, constructing star-shaped fortresses that sparkled beneath lantern light. Through times of siege and storm, these defences stood firm, their thick walls echoing with resolve. The strategic placement of forts along rivers and trade routes made the Dutch landscape a challenging puzzle for any invader to solve. Dikes and sluices weren't just tools for agriculture. They were weapons too. The Dutch could flood entire fields at a moment's notice, turning expected battlegrounds into watery traps. This tactic, known as inundation, proved to be a powerful defence during invasions. Foes found themselves halted by rising waters, their advance slowed or even reversed, as the Dutch used the land's natural features to tip the scales of conflict. Within the glowing walls of a Dutch fort, life bustled with purpose and anticipation. Soldiers trained on ramparts, artisans repaired cannons by candlelight, and commanders pored over maps marked with secret plans. At night, lanterns flickered through arrow slits, casting light on thick stone corridors and inner courtyards. Each person played a part in the fortress's defence, united in the will to persevere against far larger foes. While most strongholds were made of stone and earth, the Dutch weren't afraid to experiment. They introduced innovations like movable bridges and cleverly disguised traps around their fortifications. Even their fort layouts broke from tradition, with angled walls designed to deflect cannon fire. This unyielding spirit of improvement helped the Dutch stay one step ahead, ensuring no two sieges were ever quite the same for their enemies. The line between water and war blurred along the Dutch borders. Defensive rings of forts encircled vital cities and trade hubs, each one working in tandem with dikes, moats and sluices. These intricate systems allowed defenders to coordinate responses with precision, opening floodgates, raising barriers, or igniting warning fires on the battlements. Such coordination hinged on trust, discipline, and an unwavering sense of shared destiny. Not all threats came with the clash of armies. Ever present was the battle against the sea itself. Dutch engineers applied the same ingenuity found in military defences to keep rising tides at bay. Massive seawalls and intricate networks of dikes protected the lowlands, while sluice gates ensured rivers didn't turn traitor during storms. In this way, every Dutch victory was won not just against invaders, but against nature itself. Reflecting on these fortifications, it's clear how the Dutch spirit shaped more than just the countryside. These defences were a product of cooperation across society: engineers, labourers, soldiers and citizens, all playing crucial roles. Their enduring legacy is a testament to how creativity and unity can build not only walls, but a resilient nation. In the next chapter, we shall see how negotiation and treaties carried the story forward beyond the walls. Chapter 5: Diplomacy and Treaties Building Peace. As wars raged across Europe, the Dutch Republic realised that victory on the battlefield was only half the story. Lasting survival depended on skilled negotiation and the art of diplomacy. In candle-lit chambers, representatives gathered, determined to craft treaties that would secure the Republic's future and ensure that peace, however fragile, might blossom amid the continent's deep mistrust and rivalry. Within these solemn halls, long tables stretched under flickering candlelight, and every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Diplomats from rival powers, wary but resolute, exchanged words that weighed as much as any cannonball on the battlefield. Here, war's echoes grew faint, replaced by the sound of pens scratching on parchment, each stroke striving to transform hostility into the hope of peace and profitable partnerships. The Dutch, renowned for their pragmatism and keen understanding of commerce, used these negotiations not only for survival, but as opportunities. Every agreement offered more than just the promise of safety. It opened new doors for trade and prosperity. Peace treaties, fragile as they were, enabled the Republic to secure vital alliances and maintain its hard-won independence amid the turbulence of Europe's great powers. But trust did not come easily. Each signature on a treaty was both a pledge and a gamble, and betrayal was always just a whisper away. Dutch diplomats had to study their counterparts closely, reading gestures and intentions as carefully as they read legal clauses. In this quiet contest of wits, political acumen was as essential as any fortress or army, keeping the Republic's interests safe. These negotiations were painstaking and often stretched late into the night, as envoys sought common ground and hesitated at every compromise. Differences in language, religion and ambition hung heavy in the air, requiring patience and flexibility. Yet, when the ink finally dried and treaties were sealed, a rare stillness settled a moment when the tension of war gave way to the fragile calm of diplomacy. The impact of these treaties was profound. They not only guarded the Republic's borders, but helped stabilise wider regions. Neighbours who once clashed on the battlefield found, through careful diplomacy, ways to coexist or even cooperate. For the Dutch, peace was more than an absence of fighting. It was a foundation on which to build new ventures, explore distant markets, and nurture innovation at home. Yet with each peace came a lingering uncertainty. Old rivalries smouldered beneath the surface, and shifting alliances kept diplomats ever vigilant. The Dutch Republic understood that treaties, though essential, were often temporary solutions. To thrive, they needed to cultivate both caution and optimism, remaining alert to threats and open to opportunities, ready to return to the table at the first hint of new conflict. In the quiet after the treaties were signed, life in the Republic resumed a gentler rhythm. Merchants, artisans and citizens could focus on growth rather than survival. These periods of peace, painstakingly negotiated and bravely maintained, allowed the Dutch spirit to shine innovative, resilient and always reaching for a future beyond the shadow of war. Chapter 6. Human Cost Society, Under Pressure. As the battles raged and treaties shifted, the real impact was felt in the towns and homes across the Dutch Republic. Every new conflict brought uncertainty to daily life, but also tested the strength of communities. The people, from bustling port cities to rural fields, learned to cope and adapt. Each family faced its own hardships, shaping a story of survival beneath the pressures of nearly constant war. Merchants who once thrived on bustling trade lanes felt the sting of naval blockades and ruined cargo. Shops shuttered when ships were lost, leaving families to improvise new livelihoods. Yet, in adversity, resourcefulness emerged. Markets adapted, turning to local goods and creative exchange. The risks of commerce in such times taught Dutch traders hard lessons in patience and resilience. Even through scarcity, the will to provide and prosper burned quietly in every marketplace. For Dutch soldiers, conflict brought hardship and sacrifice. Long campaigns meant months away from home, facing the harshness of weather as well as the enemy. In muddy trenches or atop fortress walls, camaraderie tightened among the ranks. Letters from home were cherished lifelines to normal life. Despite the hardships, many remained driven by duty to the Republic, drawing pride from their stand in defence of freedom and the prosperity of their families. Entire families endured constant worry. Each thunder of distant cannon could mean loss of father at the front, a ship overdue, or a harvest ruined by war's disruption. Mothers and children took on new burdens, running farms, businesses, or workshops in place of absent men. The sense of community support deepened, with neighbours leaning on each other for safety and solace. Even as the world seemed unstable, bonds of care held Dutch society together. Society had to find ways to adapt. Churches and guilds organised relief for the widowed and orphaned, giving aid where government could not reach. Education did not pause lessons, continued, sometimes in makeshift classrooms far from danger. Dutch inventiveness found new outlets, from enhancing windmills to fortifying homes. Through these practical responses, the Dutch preserved a sense of normalcy, even as the outside world pressed in with relentless uncertainty. Despite the trials, the arts and culture remained alive. Painters captured the resilience of the age scenes of night watchmen, bustling markets, and quiet interiors lit by candlelight. Music and storytelling offered comfort and escape, weaving tales of hope and perseverance. These cultural lifelines helped families endure the pressures surrounding them, reminding all that even in hardship there was beauty and meaning to be found in daily life. Some communities faced harsher struggles than others. Border villages bore the brunt of raids and troop movements, sometimes rebuilding from ashes more than once. Religious minorities, too, navigated delicate balances of loyalty and suspicion, finding protection among neighbours or seeking new beginnings elsewhere. Through these challenges, a broader Dutch identity was slowly forged, defined by mutual reliance and the willingness to rebuild again and again. In the end, the Dutch experience of war was not only about armies or treaties, but about the ordinary people who endured and persevered. The true cost of decades of conflict was counted in disrupted lives, lost opportunities, and the persistent hope for peace. Through resilience and adaptation, society not only survived, but emerged with new strengths, a testament to the Dutch spirit in times of both hardship and recovery. Chapter 7. Long-term results. Shaping European balance. As battles subsided and treaties were signed, a new European order began to take form. The Dutch Republic had weathered storms of war and emerged stronger, but it was not only their independence that endured. Their experience became a lesson for nations far beyond their borders, leaving ripples across time and reshaping ideas of what a balanced Europe could be. In this final chapter, we reflect on the far-reaching legacy of war and peacemaking in the Dutch Republic. These events echoed through the corridors of European courts, inspiring a tradition of measured diplomacy and careful alliances. As we look back, we see that these efforts were not just reactions to conflict, but part of a long-term vision that would influence the wider continent for centuries to come. The Dutch model of tolerance and negotiation offered a new approach to international relations. Their preference for balancing power instead of overwhelming rivals became a noteworthy alternative to endless wars. This ability to mediate and build coalitions shifted perceptions across Europe. The Dutch inspired neighbours to consider peace as a tool of strength and innovation as a safeguard against future threats. Innovation did not stop in the fields of battle or the halls of government. The Dutch continued to develop methods of fortification, shipbuilding, and finance long after the guns fell silent. These advancements became integral to European progress. Banking systems, tradable bonds, and improved navigational pioneered and exported by the Dutch helped underpin the emerging balance of power. The legacy of war and peacemaking shaped the Dutch identity. Their resilience under pressure and their resourcefulness in building alliances earned a lasting reputation. Dutch cities became centres of diplomacy, where delegates from various states met to settle disputes. The peace treaties negotiated in these cities became blueprints for others, spreading the concept of compromise throughout Europe. As the Dutch Republic became a beacon for trade and diplomacy, its influence was felt not only in Europe but farther afield. The lessons of cooperation, pragmatic governance, and flexible alliances travelled with merchants, scholars, and diplomats. The Netherlands stood as proof that small nations could have a large impact, guiding the great powers toward a more stable and interconnected world. Even as other empires rose and fell, the values forged by the Dutch experienced balance, negotiation, and innovation remained part of the European story. The peace conferences and alliances of later centuries were shaped by the precedents set in this era. The Dutch Republic's legacy is found in the quiet mechanisms of modern diplomacy and the enduring hope for peaceful coexistence. Today, we remember the Dutch not only for their military achievements, but for their role in shaping a resilient, interconnected Europe. Their journey through hardship, adaptation, and reconciliation offers lessons for every generation. As the chapter closes, it is clear Dutch story is more than a chronicle of conflict. It is a testament to ingenuity and the ongoing quest for balance across nations.